Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session. It's Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. It is 9:08 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left, Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Gary Edwards, Commissioner Emily Klaus, and on Zoom is Commissioner Mejia, County Manager Leonard Hernandez, and Assistant County Managers Rob Gilder and Josh Cummings. Public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. There's 3 items, but my understanding is that we have a proposal to add an executive session for 30 minutes prior at the top end of the agenda.
So I'd like to make a motion to add 2 items to the agenda, 1 executive session under.
This is under
4230.
110.
110 to last no, 1A to last, or 1F to last no longer than, what'd you say, 30 minutes? And then additional item under Commissioner items, we have a request from Commissioner Klaus to discuss legal representation according with RCW 4.96.0413 regarding recall proceedings related to the petition filed against her by Arthur West. So I'd like to add that as well.
Commissioner Klaus.
Just for clarification, that's not an item that I specifically requested to be added to the agenda. I feel appropriate to add that to the agenda, but I just wanted to make that clear that I sent that message to the prosecuting office and county management as per the RCW. That's what it says, but it sounded like I asked for that to be added to the agenda, and I just wanted to make that clear for the record that that's not what I was requesting necessarily, but I do feel that that's appropriate. So.
Okay, so there's a motion. I guess for purposes of discussion, is there a second?
There's a second.
Okay, second from Commissioner Edwards, and then on discussion on the motion, I guess I would ask. I know that there's been some e-briefs or emails to the board about the timelines on the recall, and is the issue of Commissioner Klaus, is that are we in the right slot of time? I thought there was like a couple of things have to happen.
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. I have a question into council, but the response was that until a request is made, there's nothing for the board to decide upon. So now that a request has been made, I can't verify if we're in the exact time slot, but from what I understood from the email, that now that's the question to the board and to the prosecuting attorney.
I guess the reason I asked, 2 reasons, and I'll ask Jane in a minute for her input, but just my thought is, number 1, just making sure that we're in line with the process. And number 2, as far as a substantive decision on that item, I know that I personally would, well, the process requires, and I personally would want to hear from Prosecutor Thunheim, and I know he's not available today.
Right.
So if there's timing flexibility, it would be my suggestion not to address this today, but to pick a time within whatever the appropriate time frame is where we could have the prosecutor, because I think there actually has to be by law, prosecutor has to agree in the board. It has to be mutual agreement, and so
For what?
To authorize utilization of prosecuting attorney for representing the commissioner in the recall proceeding. Unfortunately, I've gone through this twice, so I know how it works.
I guess I would say we could talk about it when it comes up on the agenda.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying that it could be a lengthy conversation that's premature if we don't have the prosecutor here to participate. But Jane, can I get your input on the question of that, timing wise at least, legal?
Yeah. Good morning, commissioners. And I apologize, I'm having some computer problems this morning, so let me know if there are issues here. I would strongly recommend to the board that you, before making any decision, that you schedule an executive session to meet with the prosecutor about this. It is pending litigation, and I'm not prepared to address it today. I haven't been looking at it, as I think you all know, that others in my office are handling this. But I think there may be some information or issues that legal counsel would want to discuss with you on it. So I'd recommend scheduling an executive session with the prosecutor. And so I don't know if this is something that Scott Cushing could discuss with you, or if you need John Thunheim there. My guess would be you'd want to schedule with John to have an executive session and then have it on your agenda.
And then Jane, what's the time, like, is Commissioner Klaus's request trigger, do we have 14 days? Do we have 30 days? Do we have 5 days? What's our,
I don't think.
As I said, I have not been looking at this. The outline, I think, is in, I understand there's an email that went out to all of you, setting out the timeline, and I can pull that up. But otherwise, yeah, I don't have that in my head. So I have not memorized that statute, so hold on.
Vice Chair?
I just say with it, placing it on the agenda is the appropriate place to have this discussion, in my opinion. So all I'm asking is throw it on the agenda.
I think we can have the discussion without making a final determination, maybe, I don't know.
Commissioner?
So if you're, yeah, I guess I would recommend that you have a discussion about the pending litigation with the prosecutor and schedule an executive session to do that, would be my recommendation.
For me, I know all about this issue because I went through it personally twice, so the only information that I would need to discuss it or decide it is input from the prosecutor, so I don't see for me, doesn't make sense to have a discussion about it today and without any prosecutorial input. Commissioner Mejia?
Is Scott available?
I can step out and see if he's available.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would definitely like it to be Mr. Thunheim.
He's not available today.
I mean,
I can tell you that they are, the timeline for the petition to be filed with the court is,
It's already
coming up next week, and then there is a timeline after that.
So again, like I said, I would talk about this, on the agenda, but there's a timeline for this whole process that's already started. So yeah, I think it's important to get an answer to Commissioner Klaus, immediately.
And
That timeline external to us doesn't change.
I guess I would like to bring up one other thing, if I may, Chair.
Can I go ahead, because, sorry, I keep
Oh.
raising my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
No,
it.
that's
Commissioner
okay.
Klaus, go ahead.
It keeps being brought up, we should wait till this is on the agenda, but I think the purpose of this discussion is to figure out if we should put it on the agenda. And I'm not sure how this is being brought up by Commissioner Fournier at this time when my email included the prosecutor, the county manager, and the chair of the board, so that it could go through the proper channels, because my reading of the RCW, it says that this request can be made and it has to be approved by the legislative authority of the local government entity, which is us, which is why I included the chair and the county manager, and the attorney representing the local governmental entity, which to me read as Prosecutor Thunheim. But of course, Jane I included on the email because Jane has been assisting us with these matters. So I just, I don't feel it needs to be addressed immediately unless there's a statutory requirement that it's addressed immediately, which is why I tried to put it through the proper channels so that we didn't have to spontaneously bring it up in a work session. And you, like you said, you've been through this, so you know the process better than,
We've all been through it.
Commissioner Edwards?
In regard to the RCW that you're looking at, it does say the legislative authority. And the legislative authority is the Board of County Commissioners. It's not the chair.
well, I
So I
can't send
think
an
it's
email to the full
appropriate.
board.
Well, it's appropriate that we do discuss this, I think. And as far as several members having been through it, the difference is, in my estimation, those were work-related issues. And in this case, it's not a work-related issue. It's a individual on the board being challenged by a citizen, but having nothing to do with
Right.
anything that took
And
place.
then my question
What's
is,
the debate on a motion that would be during the agenda?
So
All we're
may-
talking about is putting this on the agenda.
I would like to respond to that if 100% correct, Commissioner Edwards, and then what the legal significance of that distinction is what I need to know. So, it may be that it's dispositive that they have that difference, or it may be that it's irrelevant. I don't know that. Because the ones that, like you say, the ones that related to me were votes I took on the board, so they really didn't, they were a completely different category. But I don't know if that matters. So, and Scott may be able to give us that kind of insight, but,
happy to step out, just a time check. You know, Jane was gracious enough to make herself available.
She's only available till 9:30.
She's only available till 9:30.
So let's,
Can we address the first executive session and then come back and?
Well, we can put it on the agenda, and if later we want to take it off, we can table it for later. So I'll just call for the question to amend the agenda.
okay, is there, there's a motion to amend agenda in a second. The question's been called. I'm just gonna skip that step and go to the vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. It passes 3-2. So, then we have the executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110F, to evaluate and to receive and evaluate complaints or charges brought against a public officer or employee. And so that's 30 minutes is the estimation. It's 9:19. We'll be in executive session till
Chair,
9:49.
only 15 minutes because Jane will have to leave us.
We may be able to, well, okay, we'll extend
Yeah.
if we need to, because we may be able to, this is not the type of executive session that requires a council to
Right.
be legal.
Okay.
So we may be able to extend it if we're still in the middle of the discussion. But I'll let that advisement get done and let the technology catch up.
And then, Amy, could you step out and see if Scott Cushing's is free?
Randy, are we good on the live stream?
I did,
Please verify for me.
it depends on, I'm
Okay, it's 9:53 a.m. We're completed the executive session that was added to this morning's agenda. We're in the wake of that, I believe there has been direction given to the county manager to work through the final version of the recommendations that Commissioner Mejia sort of, which was a kind of a tweaking of the county manager's initial draft, and we've given appropriate direction to the county manager on that.
Along with publish a statement from the board, I would say that.
That's the topic we can take up as connected to. So Vice Chair Fournier has proposed a board statement, and just to kind of, we're getting calls from media and whatnot to sort of address the county response to what we've been talking about in executive session. And so everybody's got this document. I know you had said that you were still wordsmithing it a little bit, or?
I mean, I was, you do a pretty good job, and I would, I would accept whatever, edits or suggestions you had. I struck out a couple things, and I was concerned about one sentence in particular.
Yep.
But I think I'm looking, or I'm hoping we can just accept some type of acknowledgement of accepting and taking the concerns seriously. But we don't need to get more descript other than that. In Commissioner Mejia's memo, I think we get descript enough for working purposes.
So what is the decision point we're trying to reach today? Since we have a lot of items on the agenda.
Whether the proposal is to agree on some iteration of this statement based on the fact that there's been discussion, there's been questions coming in from media. Would it be useful? I think Commissioner Fournier believes it would be useful to have a simple, clean, agreed upon statement that the county could put forward. I mean, you could just strike the sentence that you underline. I think it keeps it still.
As long as the rest of it flows.
And it keeps the other, the other strikeout that you had in the first sentence, and then I think it still flows. I think it would work as a pretty clean statement with those two strikes.
I have a question, I have a point to make about that. I think in the recommendations that we're asking the county manager to continue working through with HR and legal, it addresses public relations components of how the county is currently operating. And I would suggest or recommend to the board that we kind of work through wordsmithing a statement that's an official statement from the board when we have some of those public relations strategies ironed out, especially with the reactive nature of a lot of the statements and memos and things like that that have come out in the last several months.
I'll get to you, Commissioner Edwards, in a sec. What I would say is that had we gone forward as we were contemplating with, the really detailed responses, I would say this would be unneeded. The statement would speak for itself, but given that we wanted to continue, my position is based on the fact that we want to make some refinements and that's going to be delayed, but yet there's inquiries coming through, this could be useful.
I appreciate that.
Commissioner Edwards.
I just want to say that we don't need any more delays as we move forward with this. And withholding this, I think would just cause undue bureaucratic delay.
So with removal of the 3 words in sentence 1 and the second sentence of paragraph 2, that statement, would that be willing to be a friendly amendment to your?
I like that.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Is there a motion there?
I move to accept I move to direct the county manager to issue a statement from the board based on the following, or based on the discussed edits of the draft statement I provided.
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have something. This statement draft that Commissioner Fournier has brought before us that we're talking about approving right now is in response to some concerns that were raised that are related to workplace safety. And I think that this is reactive and it just gives the media more ammunition to put things that are out of context in the press. When we have our final meeting of the day or of the year today as a board, we've had staff waiting to start an agenda setting meeting that was scheduled to start at 9 a.m. because of more inflammatory remarks. And we're going to reactively publish a statement that doesn't highlight the context of any of this and just raises more alarm. So.
And I would say that you have an absolute conflict of interest in making any type of statement, because anytime we haven't said anything, there's been someone's opposing counsel that's had a lot to say, that has been in complete opposition to evidence, reports, board positions. So, this is, in my mind, us trying to make sure that we get an opinion out and that we work as a board, and we stop being allowed to be pushed around and have inappropriate and wrong stories put out there for us.
Other discussion on this motion? I mean, I understand the point you're making, but I think it's there's been enough that's come forward just over the last 2 days that's gonna raise the same questions in a sense. And so I don't see that this statement makes that situation worse. Hopefully it makes it better in the sense of, but I do understand what you're saying, that there's a lack of context either way that's going to raise questions. I don't think we can get around that. So we just have to do as best we can with the sort of a difficult situation such as it is. So if there's no other discussion, I'll call for the vote on this motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Sure, Mejia, you're abstaining?
I'll vote aye.
Aye. Okay, so 4 votes aye, and that motion passes. So let's move on then
Did you
to.
need the edits, or was it clear?
It was clear.
Okay.
Let's move on to review of the draft agenda for this afternoon's meeting. It's the last Board of County Commissioners meeting for 2024. We will have an unusual structure today in the sense that we will be doing a swearing in of our 3 commissioners that were elected or re-elected to office at 1 p.m. There's a run of show that I saw related to that, and if there's, I guess I'll just stop there and let's see if, just to walk through this. Pledge of Allegiance, there's some typos here, Madam Clerk. On Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the agenda. First up would be the swearing in. You have a schedule for that, and if there's any questions about that, this is the time to address. Did everyone get this, or is it just me? It looks like this is approximately, 105 to 130. With this layout. I'll give you guys a chance to check that out for a minute.
Keep the speeches under 30 minutes.
Kiss.
Based on the schedule, Commissioner Fournier, you're gonna have to pare it down.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no questions there, that'll be kind of the schedule that I'll be walking through. And then we'll be in, it may go closer to 2, or if not, we'll recess until 2, at which time we will reconvene. We'll go straight to opportunity for the public to address the board. County manager update. Is there any update you're planning to provide?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay. Questions on any of that? All right. We have consent items 3A through 3L. Just check and take a look here. A few of these are new items, it looks like. Madam Clerk. We have 3B, a new item, 3E, a dollar amount was added, 3I is a new item. So just keep your ears open for those. 3A, Essential Services Contract Award for Thurston County Landscaping Services. Yep, let's keep things concise, especially if it's an item we've seen last week.
Right, Bruce Robrander, Essential Services Director, are requesting to enter a 2-year contract with the winning bidder for contracting for landscaping services in the amount of $562,800 for the next 2 years.
Any questions? No, thanks, guys. 3B, Commissioner representation on boards and commissions. We went through this yesterday. This will just be to approve the schedule that Amy, you finalized. Okay, any questions there? Okay. Item C is Community Planning and Economic Development 2025 Heritage Grant Program Awards.
Commissioners, I have the next few items, so I'll try to go quickly. This first one is for the 2025 Heritage Grant Program Awards, and this is the board awarding 4 $10,000 grant proposals that were referred to you by the Historic Commission. This is an annual grant awards program.
Any questions? All good, thank you. Go ahead, Ashley, on to D.
This is an amendment to a contract that we hold with Thurston Regional Planning Council, the Boundary Review Board, to process annexations for the county. So it's an amendment that would authorize an amount of $20,000 to be added on that to process any annexations coming up in the new year.
3D, any questions? No.
Continuation we've been doing.
Continuation.
Yep. All right, thank you, Ashley.
Yep.
Go to 3E, another CPED item.
Yep, so this is our Regional Environmental and Education Program interlocal agreement. We enter into these every 5 years with our partners to implement our stormwater municipal permit. So this agreement would be at a total cost of $210,000 or over that period of 5 years starting January 1st, 2025.
This is Stream Team, right?
Stream Team, yep.
And this is grant pass-through, isn't it?
It's stormwater funds primarily.
This is a continuation also. The work we do on
Stormwater fund.
Cool. I think the Stream Team is doing better and better stuff.
They're doing really cool stuff, and they're doing a lot more things in rural areas as well, South County, which has been exciting to see.
Okay, thank you.
I've been not having a Stream Team where I came from. Impressed at what this group has been able to accomplish and how they work interdepartmentally.
And we will have a briefing in the new year on that, so you'll get to hear from Miriam and her team on all the great stuff that they have been doing and have planned in the coming year.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item F. Again, CPED, public hearing on countywide planning policy update.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up to the work sessions that we've been having with the board, setting a public hearing to update countywide planning policies for tribal participation as well as UGA swaps. So this is an opportunity to hear from the public on those proposals before the board takes any final action.
Does this one cover cleanup? You know, where things added, deleted, all that kind of
It's the
minutia?
new UGA swap legislation that got passed
So
by the
it's
state.
specific to that.
That plus tribal participation, which is also in response to recent changes in state law.
Okay.
So this would be the public's input on the policy update that we collaborated with cities on following the UGM meeting last summer.
Yes.
And then there was follow-up with the cities, and then we've kind of got an agreed upon set of changes that we now want to hear public input on.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to keep it brief.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to remember that this is a significant item, so I just want to make sure I remembered what we were at on that.
And
Okay.
we'll be sure to send an e-brief before that public hearing gets near, but we just need to make sure the public hearing is set so we can notice appropriately. And there are a lot of stakeholders, so we want to do some extra notification on this one.
Yeah, it represents, as you mentioned, Chair, a significant amount of work from staff at CPED, so we're very thankful for them marching some of these long trek items forward.
And it will facilitate the board being able to potentially take action on bar holdings in the next year.
Yeah, okay. UGA swaps, interesting issue. Let's go on to G. This is a district court item for substance monitoring, and Frankie Peters. Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Frankie Peters, Court Executive Officer for the District Court. This item we had discussed last week. This is for an extension for the District Court Substance Monitoring Program, which is ARPA-funded program. The board should have before them the amended extension that includes the recently allocated ARPA funding to continue for services through 2026. This contract also covers substance monitoring for our Mental Health and Veterans Court.
Any questions for Frankie?
Just thank you for everything. I know this is a really important program and you and your team do a lot of hard work, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you for your patience this morning. On to H, Emergency Services, Intergovernmental EMS Contracts for Basic Life Support Funding.
Good morning. My name is Chris Clem. I'm the BLS Program Manager with Medic One. We presented last week, so I'll keep it really brief. We're requesting a renewal of an intergovernmental agreement that allows Medic One to distribute EMS levy funds to the 12 fire agencies in support of basic life support services. Welcome any questions that have come up over the past week.
Questions for Chris? Well done. See you too there, Ben. Thank you. All right, next up, item I. 3I, Human Resources, Resolution extending the recruitment incentives program for lateral deputy sheriffs and corrections deputies. And this is a new item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tara Wickline, Compensation and Benefits Manager. There are actually two resolutions attached to this agenda item. Both are extending pilot programs in the Sheriff's Office that we've had discussions about. The first one is extending the pilot program for hiring incentives for deputy sheriffs. And the next one is for hiring incentives for corrections deputies. The request is to extend these programs through June of 2025 with the caveat that the corrections pilot program also has a limit of only hiring up to 10 lateral deputies.
And why 10? Like, where is that? Is that
I think it might have been a budgetary. I don't know off the top of my head why that one had a number limit.
I believe that's the number that's was set at the correct me if I'm
It was
wrong.
from the very beginning,
From the very
yes.
beginning, so we haven't changed
You
it.
just haven't quite filled them yet. Okay, and then on the, is the current pilot expect to expire at the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Collins?
It makes sense that this is coming up. I remember that these programs, the pilots were set to end at the end of this year, but I'm wondering why this is a new item this week rather than having this on our discussion last week.
There's a time frame. Matera, you want to speak to it?
I actually don't know. This was kind of a surprise to me as well.
We have flagged for our attention and working with our sheriff that the current program ends at the end of the month.
The sheriff's in the waiting room, if we could.
You can get him out of the waiting room?
Maybe wait till we get him there just in case.
But yeah, it ends at the end of the month, and so they wanted to renew prior to it expiring. So Maria was.
So I mean, it could have come up last month or something, but
Yeah.
just getting.
Right.
We're gonna got in there late,
Okay,
in no sense.
I'd like to move that to department items.
Okay, that's your prerogative. So item 3I will be a department item, and
Clerk, do we have to amend the agenda at the start of the meeting, or can we just move it now?
To amend the agenda at the start of the meeting.
I want to wait to get the sheriff on before we move past this item. Sheriff Sanders, can you hear me?
He's connecting to audio.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we just kind of concluded item 3I, which is the resolution extending the recruitment incentives program. What came up was just that it's expiring at the end of the year. Obviously, we're kind of walking this on at the last second, but that's, sometimes how things roll. And the proposals for one of them to extend for 6 months, and then both of them for 6 months, but the corrections has a 10-person cap. Right. Is there that's kind of what we got through. Is there more context you want to add since this is a new item?
No, just that the lateral incentive program has been hugely successful. As most of you know, we really struggled to recruit laterals from 2021 to 2024. That was for a number of reasons. But since doing this, you know, a part of this, I think, was the piece for the lateral, right? The bonus, all those types of things. But another big piece of this was rewarding our own staff who recruited the lateral over to our agency, which saved us a bunch of money. And by giving them 40 hours of leave that they could use as they need to, really helped turn our entire agency into a bunch of recruiting officers. So it's been hugely successful. Just for the patrol lateral side alone, we had more than 50 applicants put their name in since I think February is when it went live. That is up from almost zero. So huge improvement. It has allowed us to basically lift ourselves out of this staffing crisis. And so I'm extremely grateful that HR and the board and everyone came together to get things going. And I'm also looking forward to helping fill some of these vacancies as we go into the public safety tax next year, and then ultimately give us a timeline so we can wind it down as well.
So Commissioner Klaus requested that it be a department item, just so that for whatever reason she can articulate. Is that going to be an issue of having someone from your office available?
No, I'll depending on what time it is. I do have a packed schedule today. We all do, so it'll likely be via Zoom. But
yeah, that's fine. It would be probably 2:30 or 2:33 in that range.
Yep, it'll probably be by Zoom, but I'll try to make it there in person.
I just have one more comment to add. The reason why I'm asking to put that onto department items, and I think Sheriff, right before you popped in, I had asked why this was being walked on now. And I understand that this is, the pilot ends at the end of the year. If this would have come up last week, I would have had questions about, I mean, you say it's a huge improvement, and I think we all know that. I know in our one-on-ones, we've talked about how operationally it's been a huge improvement. But we've also talked about how we won't see the financial benefits or impacts right away, and that we would have to wait for this first pilot to finish to be able to look at how has this financially impacted the agency. And those are the questions I would have asked last week had this been brought up last week. So I just wanted to highlight that, you know, acknowledging the huge improvement operationally. You mentioned this has lifted us out of the staffing crisis. I would just want to know the financial impacts. So if there's anything that any staff or your office, Sheriff, can provide me related to the financial impacts, if we've seen that yet, I'd be interested in that. And then also knowing if extending this pilot shifts the funding for the pilot to any new source, or if it's going to be absorbed and what fund it's going to be coming out of. So those are the questions I would have had if we had time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can answer some of those now. What I'll do is for the meeting later today, I will have Chief Thompson run the overtime. I can already tell you that our deputies are telling me that the overtime is down, that which is what we were aiming for. So the big thing that is going to be different from this year to next year, in theory, you know, so we don't lose a bunch of deputies, which I think is true for any operation, is that now that we have a bunch of deputies hired, the overtime is going to fall off next year. And that's where we're looking for some major cost savings, the burnout from the staff, the inability to take days off. Those are the things that we were trying to resolve with this incentive program, and it has worked. So I will get the actual hard numbers for you though. The big difference is going to be from January to December of next year is where we're going to see the offsetting cost. Obviously this year we had a very large overtime bill, and I've gone on the record a number of times on why that overtime bill is so large for the training and things like that we did not want to cut this year. Next year we'll have enough staff that it won't automatically result in a ton of overtime every time we need to train someone, or every time someone calls in sick and you've got multiple shifts having to cover the shortage. So that has been where the savings are going to come from. And the nice part is that we used our vacancy savings this year to leverage success for next year, is how we basically looked at this program. So by using money that was just going to be sent back through the general fund this year, paying the bonuses, getting people here, getting qualified applicants here, it's going to reduce our overtime load next year. So yes, I will have some data for you on that. I'll also try to get some updated numbers from Bobby over at HR today. Last time it was over 50 applicants, and I think I just swore another lateral. So I think we're at like 14 or 15 lateral hires this year. So.
Okay, thank you. And it sounds like you'll get me the hard numbers. Will that include details related to the vacancy savings that you were able to use this year to help leverage to pay those bonuses, and whether or not you'll still have those vacancy savings to use next year?
Yeah, well, the plan is next year we still have, we're always going to have public safety tax positions that are lagged behind. So for instance, like January, we get a public safety tax position that comes open, right? Well, it takes us time to fill those spots. It's not one of those things where we just always have a deputy ready to go right away. So there's always going to be a lag in some vacancy savings there. We also have 3 positions within the public safety tax structure that are still being negotiated with the union, and those have not been filled. So a similar scenario, we're using that vacancy savings money to help propel our success forward in other areas of the agency. So yeah, the plan is still to do everything the same. With the general funds, our general fund deputies are full right now. So as of right now, there won't be any general fund dollars that are spent on the bonus for the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Anything else for the sheriff? Cut him loose. Thank you, Sheriff Sanders. Let's move
Tara.
forward to 3J, prosecuting attorney contract with CYS for youth adult diversion services.
Chair, there is just want to point out there's a typo that we'll fix. It says that the term is January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. It should read through January 31st, 2026. We'll make that change.
December 31st, 2026.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that'll be amended.
Yes.
Any other, well, I don't see a prosecuting attorney. Do we just, is there any questions, concerns about this item? I know we heard from Wayne Graham last week. Right. Okay, let's move ahead then. So this is
What needs to be amended?
oh, just the term is it's supposed to go to 2026.
So that's not an amendment, that's just a, what do they call it, a
Scrivener's
Scrivener
error.
error? Yeah, so the other things require amendments, that's just something that Amy can fix without an amendment.
Okay, Public Health and Social Services, Community Health Organization Improving Care and Equity, Pathways or Choice, Pathways 2.0.
Hello, Dr. Jen Freiheit, good morning, and with Public Health and Social Services. We talked a bit about it last time, but I will let our Division Director, Erin Berklid, give a quick rundown.
Erin Berklid, Division Director for Disease Control and Prevention, and with me Talia, who's our Community Health Worker Supervisor. So we're requesting approval for a contract for $283,400 for our care coordination program. This is a community-based program of care coordination with our community health workers. We do referrals with our TB clients over to it, connection to care, housing. They get pathways for, to stop vaping. We're really excited to expand this further. This is a big step for us. There's lots of training integrated into it. So our staff will also be certified with 80 hours of training after they're done this year. So that'll be a big step forward as well. Paige, do you want to have anything to add about the contract?
No, but we're super excited. We're cracking it open beyond COVID, so that kind of opens up our client base quite a bit, and they're limiting the amount of factors that you need to be qualified to be able to receive the assistance, so just excited.
Anything else for the team?
Thank you. I appreciate this item a lot. It's important.
Okay, thank you. Next up is item L. Public Health, request for qualification for DEI training.
Yes, this is just a request to be able to solicit bids from vendors to do a 5-part series DEI training for the health department and beyond.
Questions on this one? Discussed last week. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Department items, we'll have the sheriff's item moved over, so we'll have 2, but the one that's here already is item 4A, single source purchase grappler system.
Well, Amy said that would require a motion to move.
At the time of the beginning of the meeting, 2 p.m., yeah.
I think the item motion should be to move that consent item.
I sort of question that because it's, my understanding as a commissioner, you can't keep something on. So if the board voted down the amendment, like that's inappropriate because the commissioner has an absolute right to have something removed from consent. So I don't think there has to be a motion to remove something from consent.
It's usually just been by commissioner request if someone is.
I think what I was not referring to was the ability for the commissioner to do that, but just a timeliness on the agenda being posted and making a change to the official agenda more so than.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
then, Chair, I think you're gonna have to ask after the agenda is approved, is there a consent agenda item that the commissioner would like to remove at this time? And then
Just because
That's
we're
when it would-
within the same day of posting. If this was last week, we could absolutely move it like we've done in the past. But is that correct? Am I understanding that correct, Amy?
I believe so.
But this was put on the agenda last night or this morning, so it's different than if it were on the agenda last week and requested to be moved.
Oh, I think you're correct. If we're talking about the grappler item, I got confused with the other item that has to be moved.
Yeah, the item I.
No, I'm going back to the other item.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was tracking with you.
So I don't know that procedurally, I don't see how you could subject that to a motion that when I know that it's not within the board's purview to deny, to vote against that motion.
I
So
don't think it's a motion. I
that
think
seems like it's,
I think it's to amend the agenda.
I don't
but if the
think
commissioner
so.
said no,
I think
you can't
honestly,
force a commissioner to vote on consent.
it's
I mean,
you approve the agenda and then during the consent items, when the chair announces it, he also asks, is there an item any commissioner would like to remove at this time? And at that point, a commissioner can request to remove an item. And it doesn't have to be
a formal
a
motion to
formal
amend the
motion, it's
agenda.
just a request and
You're
then
sliding something over on
you're
the
just sliding
agenda?
something over to the
And is
agenda.
that-
Even if it's within
That seem right? I'm
24
looking at
hours?
Coos County Manager who sat in my seat.
No, I think that's an appropriate process.
Okay, so we're just gonna, standard question is, does Commissioner want to remove any item from consent? Commissioner Klaus will articulate that. I'm glad you brought it up, so we give a heads up to the sheriff, and then we can just, we don't need a motion to amend the agenda.
I would, maybe we could talk about it later. I would just say, if it's within 24 hours and we posted an agenda to the public, we might want to think about how we change that agenda outside of a motion within that 24-hour period. That would be my only, like, maybe we can discuss that and elaborate that at a later time. You know, like a 2 weeks ago item, I see the agenda as much more manageable.
Well, the item was just added recently and so
Understood.
that's why I think there's this confusion.
Maybe a remedy for that, like Commissioner Borneo said, we can talk about it later. Maybe the remedy is within 24 hours, if a new item is added, it automatically goes on to department items so that we have the chance to discuss it. I mean, that might not be the best way to go about it, but I'm just thinking about.
Well, I mean, we have this time to discuss it,
Yeah.
and this is where we're say, okay, I'd rather it not be on consent. And that's, I think it's just a matter of process, like, there's an answer to this.
Yeah, I would be against just dropping something on the agenda. This is kind of a new item, kind of not a new item, because it's asking to continue an existing program. But maybe this is like, this is a procedural question, and I'm obviously trying to advocate for tightening our process every chance I get.
We'll definitely bring this up as a point of discussion, because there's some other procedural things we're tracking, but thanks for the clarification. I think we understand from the board.
Yeah, you understand that there's kind of a tension there.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure what, like, trumps.
So, sounds like the clerk, we can move forward as described by the commissioners.
Okay. So let's go to our grappler. We had this one, and I'm trying to remember the situation with the single source purchase. Oh, yeah, I know what it is. Yeah, we've already done the approval. This is just the single source purchase component of the purchase that had already been approved by.
Right.
Everybody on board of there? Okay. Yeah, I do remember that. Then let's go on to Central Services 5A. Contract award to Axon for body cameras, vehicle cameras, and tasers.
As Bruce is coming up, I just want to say this one represents a lot of great work by our departments working together. Thank you, Bruce, for taking the lead. You helped to provide some clarity. Thank you for Sherry and her team. And then special thanks, Josh Cummings, the new Assistant County Manager, for jumping in and bringing it all together so we make sure we understand exactly what's taking place. I think it's hard for this to be represented, how many meetings and emails and all the work that you did to run this to ground. But back to you now, Bruce.
Thank you. Bruce Rohrbeiner, I'm Central Services Director. And as the County Manager said, this has been a collaborative process between Central Services, Information Technology, the Sheriff's Office, and the Budget Office. So a lot of appreciation to everybody who assisted getting this to this point. This is a request to enter into a contract for 100 body cameras, 100 vehicle cameras, and 100 tasers with Axon Enterprises in the amount of $4,911,000. 10-year contract. Initial funding will come from ER&R reserves, and then the ongoing service will be paid for through information technology rates, which will be collected from the sheriff's office. This had its origins in a board work session on 28 October where the deficiencies with the current system were brought forward for the board's consideration. And the funding for this is in the 2025 budget. Are there any questions?
I want to say thank you, Bruce, for getting me the info I asked for last week as far as the specific numbers and how they're which pot of money each expenditure comes out of. I just wanted to state that for the record and confirm that, because I'm trying to do quick math in my head. So the initial purchase in 2025 covered by ER&R reserves is about 1.5 million, almost?
Yes.
Or 1.49 million. And then ongoing maintenance costs from 2026 through 2034 are about 379,000 per year. And that equates to the total amount on the agenda, which is 4.9 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's close. We don't make that first payment in 2025, is that correct? The first payment starts in 2026.
The ongoing service payments will start in 2026.
Okay, but the initial 1.4 million is 2025 out of
Yes.
ER&R. Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
You can understand why we've had so many meetings about this.
Right, yeah.
Thank you, Bruce. So next up is Commissioner's Office items. It's a set of, looks like 13 resolutions related to, that's an unlucky one. 13 resolutions related to passage of the 2025 midterm budget. We're in the middle of a biennium budget, but we still have annual obligations to go through, and certain things have to be done on an annual basis. And the commissioners have had a packet of resolutions. We've had work sessions on that. I'm going to look to Summer. Do you want to just take questions about anything, or is there value in walking back through these? I would think not, but.
What we were just discussing
Yeah.
is that it sounds like traditionally we've had some of the department directors speak to some of these individual items. And so they're here, and I appreciate them hanging out for this. But it's really at the board's pleasure. If you have questions about this, someone can give a high-level overview, and then to go specifics, we have department directors that are here to jump in and talk to them.
And I can walk through the edits really quick if you'd like.
Yes, I think we're on schedule, so go ahead and.
Okay, so the first one for adopting the CIP would be presented by Ashley and CPED. And then the TIP, which is the next item, would be presented by Public Works, Matt Unzelman. I would take items C and D. HR, Tara, would take E and F, which is for the salaries for the non-represented, position control, and then the elected salaries for 2025.
The elected, I see the prosecutor is missing for that one.
There's a titling error there. The prosecutor is included in the body of the resolution. Thank you, Tara, for pointing out to me that the prosecutor's office had them change the format of the resolution. So he's not listed, or that position isn't listed in the bottom of the first page. It's actually in one of the whereases above that.
Should we add it to the description, just to be clear?
It needs to be there.
Yeah. All right. Just make the edit to the.
Got it? Thank you. I had the same question.
We received an email from Tara saying that the prosecuting attorney was because of the state salary commission not approving things till later in the year.
Sarah, do you want to come into the table here?
And if I remember, the recommendation from the salary commission that we approved was for it to be, not to depend on the state side of things, but I know half of it is provided by the state and then half of it is by the county. However, when an increase goes through, like, how does that work out? And
So typically what happens, excuse me, is we have resolutions that come before the board, typically spring and summer, because the Superior Court judges, their salaries typically change July, sometimes September, but always around there. And that's also when we adjust the prosecuting attorney's salary. to reflect the new 50% on both the state side and the county side.
But it doesn't, I mean, the salary commission still gets to decide what the salary really is.
Board decide.
Yeah.
The salary commission provides a recommendation to the board that then the board usually approves. And so how does that work?
I don't know that I have that answer. I haven't been real involved with the salary commission.
So being that the salary commission has made a recommendation that the board has approved.
I would have to go back and do some research.
So the board has to approve the county's share of the
Correct.
prosecutor's salary, and generally does it through this resolution.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and there were
So the
some
prosecutor needs to be a part of this.
We just say per the state salary commission's recommendation, is that?
You could frame it that way, but, generally
We
we
typically don't.
set the amount.
Okay.
So here's what we'll do. We'll, understand what the board is going, that he needs to be included. We'll work with HR and legal to make sure that it's included appropriately, so that by the time this afternoon it comes back, he's definitely on there, because I agree, it looks odd not having him on there.
Well, I just don't want this to come back later as an emergency because we forgot to add,
Yep, I agree
right,
with
so.
you.
And it is a different format than what we've seen in the past. There were some conversations with legal that changed the language, but, you know, I wasn't really involved.
So yeah, we'll make sure that that's captured, and the clerk will work with HR, our budget team, and legal, just to make sure everything's on the up and up and represented, he's included. In the right direction.
Cool beans.
Can you give an overview of all those items and see if the board has any other questions?
Of the rest of them?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the next resolution would be to adopt the 2024 midterm operating budget. Then the next item after that would be to adopt the 2024-25 midterm capital budget. Then we have a resolution for the property tax levy increases. I did send an email out yesterday on that particular one. And we will add to the language that it is to approve, my apologies so I can see, that we're gonna approve, or it's a resolution authorizing an increase in property tax revenue in both dollars and percentage for the current expense roads and conservation futures fund, up to the 1% that's authorized by RCW 845510, and up to 7% as authorized by the voters for the Medic One Fund. And I made a notation here, it was authorized by the voters in August of 2021. And the total general fund property tax levy in 2025 will be 53 million. In the notation, the resolution does show that there is a $0 increase and a 0% increase for the current expense property tax, Medic One property tax, excluding the lid lift, and conservation futures property tax. I did have a conversation with the assessor's office. And the reason behind that is that we've had some abnormally high and extremely high refunds that are affecting the actual collection over the past couple of years. And the refund amounts are listed clearly on page 2 of that particular resolution.
Refunds.
Yes.
I thought you said refunds. Dang it.
I'll try to articulate clearer
No,
later.
I was hearing what I wanted to hear, I think.
That's okay, we all do that. So then the next one, if there are no questions on that, was that clear to everyone? We do have a resolution amending general facilities charges that will be presented by Matt. Do you want to come up and speak on that?
Tim Wilson.
Oh, Tim. Hi, Tim. Welcome.
Good morning, Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager with Public Works. Yes, this is an item that the board has already been presented with and discussed. It's a resolution amending general facility charges for the consolidated water and sewer utilities, and follows a public hearing held December 2nd and a robust outreach effort.
Questions for Tim?
No.
Okay. So then the last two is their resolution to create Fund 2350, which is for the 2024 GO Bond Fund. That particular resolution is to create the debt payment fund for the for the purpose of paying principal and interest on the 2024 limited tax general obligation bonds. And the final resolution that will come before you would be to create Fund 3250, which is our 2024 debt holding fund, which is authorizing the creation of a capital projects fund for the purpose of managing the proceeds from the issuance of the 2024 limited tax general obligation bonds, Fund 3250. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, that is the list of resolutions for today.
So we'll just, at the meeting, we'll just have to go one by one, have a motion, and then we'll just proceed through them. Any questions on that? All right, let's go on to item 7A. CPED 2024 Comprehensive Plan Amendments.
Then, this is the once a year action that the board can take to update the comprehensive plan, sub-area plans, as well as the comprehensive plan map. So this package includes 3 proposals, satisfying the appeal along the meeting that was filed in 2020 by FutureWise. And then, of course, we have 2 applicant-initiated urban growth area amendment, land use map amendment, and rezone applications in the Grand Mound area. One of those, of course, would help address workforce housing shortages down in Grand Mound. The other one would address needs identified in the industrial land study. Happy to answer questions. The motion, I will highlight that there are 2 motions that the board will be asked to take this afternoon. The first one is to adopt a resolution. The second one is to adopt an ordinance, and that's feedback we've gotten from legal.
So 2 separate.
2 separate actions.
Heads up to the vice chair on that one. How's that?
Teed up on the agenda though.
It's there like 2 separate paragraphs on page 7.
I just wanted to highlight that.
All right, we can do that.
Okay.
Any questions?
So I haven't seen an agenda item formatted this way. Vice Chair will read all of this and then we approve them together. We're not approving.
We're gonna do them separately.
Okay.
So read the first paragraph, we'll take a vote.
Okay.
Second paragraph, and that's the resolution to amend, but they're not, it's not per item or anything.
It's not per item. It has to be one package.
Layers of process over the whole package.
Okay.
So if.
One, just the ordinance implements the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
But they will,
If hypothetically you were opposed to one of the items or the package, you would vote no on both pieces,
yes,
just because of the way it's structured.
Yep.
Okay, just interesting, all right.
yeah, it's good to know the board as a collective has to decide what is in that package, and what they're voting on. And you get to vote on the whole thing, yay or nay.
Okay, any other questions? Perfect, let's move on to 8A, prosecuting attorney, department item, contract amendment with Friendship Diversion Services. Wayne Graham, I see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good day, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Commissioners, I guess. I had talked with Amy. I know I'm planning on coming over with Commissioner Klaus's recommendation to come and speak this afternoon for the community part. And I think we just made some final amendments to the contracts that allow the time frame request that we're asking for to actually be put in place. I think that's the only amendment that's left, Commissioner, unless Amy or Summer has a different thought.
Nope, I agree. Thank you.
So the end date in the motion is an amendment or?
The end date should be December 31st, 2026.
Okay.
Right, so it'll be the calendar year for next year, right?
It says August, so does that need to change?
It needs to be.
Right, that's what needs to be amended, Commissioner.
Okay.
We want to make sure that he has enough time, that the ARPA funding that's obligated, that they have enough time to spend it all down.
Will that require some kind of, is that substantive enough to need a motion to amend agenda?
Clerk, thoughts?
I don't believe so. I think if we just adjust the end date prior to the meeting.
Okay.
That was my understanding too.
Okay.
I think just for the public, if maybe the clerk, you can call out as Graham comes up to present. You know, those kinds of things just create some community members say, aha, something's different from one to another. And so just calling it out, I think for the public would be great.
Typos and adjustments or something like that. Yeah. Any other questions for Wayne? Anyone?
Wayne Green.
Not looking. Oh, sorry. Prosecutor Duran, Deputy Prosecutor Duran. Okay, thank you.
Hey, see everybody this afternoon.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, Commissioner items 9A, 2025 Chair of the Board, and 9A and 9B is Vice Chair, and
How will that work?
yeah, is there a,
So as we discussed yesterday, they're listed as two separate motions. So the chair would have been the same format, but yesterday Commissioner Fournier removed his nomination for
I
the
think
chair.
somebody just has to make a motion.
I see, yeah, so I see there's two there on the
Right.
Vice Chair.
Yeah.
So one, it'll be that presumably, and then B, there could be a motion on either side, and
Right.
there's a second, and there could be discussion, and there'd be a vote, and I mean, I guess,
So
that's
it's
just,
okay.
versus having some kind of election type of a process, we'll just keep it in motion format.
Great.
All right, any questions on that? Okay, then we'll have our commissioner reports, and we will adjourn our last meeting. So, hopefully, yeah. So that is item 1 from the original agenda. Let's go to item 2, advisory boards. Is that you, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, and we have a couple that I think I'd like to send some additional information first and bring back at our next meeting, which will be mid-year.
So the couple that you had, you're asking to push them till next year. So really you don't need to take up any advisory board issues today? Any questions? Okay, sounds good. And then we're to commissioner items, and and the first one is the one that was added by motion at the beginning. Let's take up that. We were also looking for advice of counsel or the county manager.
Yeah, so they're in the process of assigning it. That's what Scott informed Amy of, and so they're actually not sure who's gonna take that on. So they don't have anyone available at this time.
To me, just reading the rules, it's plain that the legislative, I'll just read it. It says, whenever an action or proceeding for damages is brought against any past or present officer, employee, or volunteer of a local government entity of the state arising from acts or omissions while performing or in good faith purporting to perform his or her official duties, such officer, employee, or volunteer may request the local government entity to authorize the defense of the action or proceeding at the expense of the local government entity. So, and then.
Does that count for recall?
Yeah, so then, RCW 2982-023 shall be paid, we can elect, and the legal, the legal costs shall be paid by the local government entity if the officer requests, so we had a request from the officer, such defense, and approval is granted by both the legislative authority of the local government entity and the attorney representing the local governmental entity. So the attorney would evaluate the complaint and determine if that officer was committing acts or omissions while performing or in good faith purported to perform his or her official duties. That's the evaluation they would provide. But the first decision point is if we would move that on. So we would evaluate based on the legislative body's point of view if they feel that providing legal is appropriate, and if we decide that legal is appropriate, it would then go on and a decision would be made by the legal authority, the legal representation, if it met those merits or whatever. So it's an if then or if or. The reason I think it's timely is because, as this clock starts, the timeline is pretty explicit, and it starts ticking December. It says, within 15 days of the receipt of the complaint, December 27th, the prosecuting attorney's office will prepare a ballot synopsis up to 200 words and transmits that to the Thurston County Superior Court. So that happens. That's being worked on right now. And then within 15 days of the receipt of that synopsis, a Superior Court judge conducts a hearing. Both sides may present arguments and are allowed legal representation. So that's a 30-day time frame that comes very quick. I've been through a recall before, and I know that there's a lot of work that goes into preparing for that Superior Court hearing. So I think it's important to not sit on this, and we don't have a lot of opportunities to make decisions between now and December 27th. So I think that we can make a decision if we're going to open up the opportunity and pass it on to the prosecuting attorney for the legal analysis, because there's no reason for them to even do it. We say yes or we say no, and we've been asked, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't know what the legal standard is by which, if there is one at all, or if it's just purely opinion or political about whether or not.
That's our side of things.
Yeah.
And then I think the legal analysis would be done by them. But, those are two mutually exclusive processes.
Because.
Is John available to jump on today at all?
He's not. Yeah, I have a lot of questions that I would want to ask prosecutor. Definitely, this is different than what we've faced in the past from my experience. Go ahead, Commissioner Everett.
If Commissioner Klaus is asking for representation, I guess, coverage, I guess I would like to hear an explanation from Commissioner Klaus as to why this is work-related, because the RCW referred to by Wayne refers to in the course of their official duties or something to that.
Just to remind the board.
Does it say that?
Our attorney, Jane, recommended, since it is pending litigation, that if we were going to discuss this in great detail, that it happen in executive session.
So my recollection from Commissioner Menser's, that was my experience, is as it was brought forward, the board voted for it. The board did have a decision point on it, like to approve counsel. So, but I'm not sure when in the process that we made that decision. So I
think the Commissioner Fournier, Vice Chair, is right in terms of there's that initial hearing and you want to have counsel there. And so, I mean, it's a timeline that's coming up.
Yeah,
It's not
if
like
she's
you
going to
can-
be provided
you can't
counsel,
kick
she needs
this
to
in-
know. If she
yeah.
needs to go get her own, she needs to know.
Right, you can't kick it into, 2 months from now, but exactly how that lays out is what I
Do we
just
need to
wanted to
lay-
hear from.
So do we go into
Prosecuting
executive session
attorneys.
then to have that discussion?
No, when I went through it, it was put out to the council. Will you provide, are you willing to provide legal counsel for the individual that is facing the recall? Yes or no? And so there has to be a motion to provide, or, and then somebody can make a motion to provide, and then we can discuss why or why not, and then have a up or down vote. I don't think you typically make a motion to deny the request, but you could. Or we could just sit here and nobody makes a motion and it just dies for lack of a motion. And then, I think in my mind, those are the three options.
I mean, there's a lot of questions I have about the legal process, which I think is why Jane recommended that if we get into the details, that it go into executive session, which I'm hearing Commissioner Fournier say, no, that's not how we should do it. But I also heard, so the RCW that was sent by the attorney is 4.96.041. And it's separated into, and I think that's what Commissioner Fournier was reading off of, and it's separated into 4 sections. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just trying to read it and interpret it offhand, which may, probably might not be completely accurate, but, so Commissioner Fournier read from item 1, which talks about, performing in good faith or purporting to perform his or her official duties, but then also read part of section 3, which is the part that our prosecutor's office highlighted as it relates to the current situation. So I think, and if anyone knows better than I do, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 4 sections of RCW 496.041 are exclusive of one another. Or are they, it's not like all of these conditions have to be met. It's like if you meet one of these conditions, then.
I think that's right, because a recall is not an action for damages.
Right, which is why that one has,
Then talks about recall, which is why when you were reading from the first paragraph, I was like, wait a minute, is that?
Right, they were
even apply?
conflated when they shouldn't have been.
I don't know if that's the standard, and even if it were the standard, so here's where I'm kind of at a loss, because I haven't scrutinized the recall petition. So like what exactly the charge is there? I know all about the lawsuit, right? So if it was about that, I could see an argument that like.
But we're not judges.
The breaches of trust.
That's different. I think that's, in my mind.
Well, let me finish my point.
Okay.
My point is just that the breaches of trust and all the things that led to our unanimous vote of the board to censure Commissioner Klaus aren't actually what the lawsuit is about. Like an unlawful term. So if the recall, and again, I haven't read the recall, but if the recall was like saying the same stuff as the lawsuit, I think you could make an argument that it falls within even subsection 1. Now, if it's going into more of the censure like area and all of that, then I think we have to, that's where I would want to hear from counsel about how do we evaluate that, because they're connected. But I do think that it's correct that like we're really looking at subsection 3, which doesn't really have a standard there. And the prosecuting attorney has to make a determination as well. And I would want to hear what their thought process is and what.
They don't need to make a determination if we say we're not interested. Like, so there's the first decision.
That's true. And I couldn't vote on that without hearing from Mr. Tuna.
And that would be, your point of view.
Yeah.
But the legislative authority has discretion. And that's, it's like you can or you can't. There's nothing that compels us to have to. This is a discretion point where we get to make a decision, and we can sit on it, and we can react 3 weeks from now, but that doesn't, if the decision is to provide her with legal counsel, that doesn't help her over the next 30 days to prepare.
Yeah, I would like to, if me not being willing to vote on this right now damages Commissioner Klaus, I'm sorry, but I'm just not in a position to, and I know that we need to move as quickly as possible, but I'm personally not gonna vote on this until I hear from Prosecutor Tunine, period. If that's next summer and she just has to go without counsel, well, sorry, I'm not gonna be able to vote without that conversation. So I can make myself, I'm leaving town Saturday, but I can make myself available by Zoom any day of the entire Commissioner winter break. So that's where I'm at, and because I just have a lot of questions about this. This is very different than the one that related to me, which was about voting on the board. This is, as we've all acknowledged, this is coming from a different type of action. So, how that all fits is just, I have questions about. And I'm not willing to vote for or against representation for her today, which means she doesn't get it if the board, we need the prosecutor anyway, but as you say, until the board affirmatively takes action, it doesn't happen. I want to be respectful, though, of the fact that if we were going to do it, it's better to do it sooner rather than later. Yeah. If we're not going to do it, it's better for her to know, because she'll need to
Right.
secure counsel.
And then the only question I would have if we decide not to is, okay, then what's the next steps? Do I have to hire, because it doesn't cover that in here. Like if the legislative authority says, no, we don't agree to this, okay, then do I have to go figure that out on my own, or is there another avenue that's
Well,
not defined here.
You would figure it out on your own.
I'm gonna go to the prosecuting attorney, Graham, who's here and has his hand up. Go ahead, Wayne.
Commissioner, what I was going to say is I will try and find out as much information I can in regards to Mr. Thunheim providing some input for this afternoon. I can see what I can do to at least try and get a time frame for his participation in this. And I don't want to say anything other than that. I'll just try and see what I can do.
You probably have a little more time than that because I don't see how we would fit any discussion on this in this afternoon. So
Completely understood. Maybe just a time frame, Commissioner, not like actual input, but just a time frame given everybody's schedules. That's what I was kind of hopefully alluding to.
appreciate that, Wayne.
I've asked Scott, and Amy's been in contact with Scott, so we can round up with Scott after.
Okay, yeah, we're circling your team with Travis and Scott as well, so thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Edwards.
I guess I would still like to hear, if we're talking about spending taxpayers' money, I would like to hear the argument from Commissioner Klaus as to why we should do that, why it's work-related, I guess is my concern, versus strictly a personal action brought on by her inappropriate situation, I guess, is what we're up against. So I'd like to hear from Commissioner Klaus why we should entertain defending this.
Would you like to do that within a motion?
She doesn't have to respond.
No, I mean, that's when you have debate. It's
up to her if she wants to.
Well, I mean, it's kind of up to Commissioner Klaus. If she's looking for assistance, justify that assistance.
I appreciate your perspective on wanting to hear that from me, and I'm not prepared to give a statement on that at this time. I'd like to have prosecutor input.
The prosecutor can't provide legal advice to you. The prosecutor can only advise the commission on whether or not those specific things rise to, the legal ability to even, because we could decide, the legislative body approves providing legal counsel, and the prosecutor could look at it and say, yeah, you weren't working within good faith and performing official duties, and then it gets thrown out. So that the prosecuting attorney does not provide legal advice to you in that respect.
You're conflating two subsections, which is why I'd prefer to talk to an actual attorney who knows how to interpret the law.
And that's what I'm trying to get you a determination on, is whether or not we'll provide you one or not, so that you can figure that out and build your defense.
Sure. I guess I am not willing to vote to spend taxpayers' money to defend this recall if the commissioner facing the recall is not willing to explain why we should spend that taxpayers' money, the taxpayers' money on this issue. So we're kind of in a dilemma in that regard, I
will say,
guess.
Commissioner Edwards, I can respond to a part of that. There are a lot of details in the recall petition, and as Commissioner Mintzer laid out, there are a lot of issues related to litigation versus the censure versus, there's different components. We've been advised by counsel as recent as this morning to be careful which details we're talking about in an open session. So I can't sit here and confidently defend something without knowing the parameters around what's allowed in a public session versus an executive session. So, I mean, that's what I can say about that. And other than that, I would like to hear from the prosecutor about, because I have not been through a recall. I don't know how the process works. I'm just trying to go according to the process, and in the interest of time, I requested this based on the highlighted section of the prosecutor's email that was forwarded to us by the county manager yesterday. So that's what I was doing, was taking an action based on the highlighted portion of the prosecutor's comments.
Can I just ask my seatmate, so Commissioner Klaus's request wasn't a motion, there's no second, no one's making a motion to provide representation to her today. So is there any problem with just, assuming that you're not in favor of it, I don't want to presume to read the minds of any of my seatmates, but if you theoretically, if you were not in favor of it right now, what would be the harm in letting us have the input of counsel before we take a vote? No one's trying to advance anything today. that would be contrary to your position. If a commissioner had a position that this was being appropriate to thing, what would be the harm in allowing input? Why do we need to vote on this today?
Well,
It's only hurting Commissioner Klaus not to have that clarity.
The clarity is important, I believe. Getting her an answer one way or another is important, I believe, and also making it clear that prosecuting attorney's office does not provide legal counsel to you right now and cannot unless it's authorized. So if you're going and seeking legal advice from the prosecuting attorney's office based on this petition, that's not authorized, and you can't do that. So just making sure that those things are clear, I think, is important. We have not authorized spending any, taxpayer money on that defense. And so going out and seeking any legal advice from the prosecutor outside of whether or not the prosecutor can provide legal advice if the legislative body authorizes it is totally out of bounds.
Agree as well, too. So, yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean,
I agree with that, just to
if I were Commissioner Klaus, I would be, in an abundance of caution, lining up legal counsel for the eventuality that the board or the prosecutor decides not to do that. So I'm sure she's savvy enough to not put herself in that position.
And I have never at any point said I was going to seek counsel or legal advice from the prosecutor. All I've done is respond to an email that highlighted subsection 3, which I've heard numerous times be conflated with subsection 1 of this RCW.
Well, anyway, I think that's a question for, my proposal is that we ask county manager to set up a meeting, whether that's executive session or not, can be based on advice of counsel, with counsel, preferably Mr. Thunheim or one of his deputies if he indicates that's appropriate at the earliest available juncture to discuss this topic that was added.
Can I get some clarification then? So I took that email as a formal request from Commissioner Klaus that we consider providing her counsel. And I'm kind of hearing a different story. That's not the case right now. You're not asking, you haven't made that formal request?
Well, you weren't included on that email, Commissioner Fournier, so I'm not sure.
It went out to everybody.
Yeah, I had this, you include me on an email that is intended for the governing body. I have to send it to.
It goes to the legislative body and it goes to the prosecuting attorney's office.
He can't just be to the chair because he's, like Commissioner Edwards said, the board has not authorized him to be the representative on this matter. I have to forward it on and make sure they're all aware.
So is there a formal request or is there not a formal request? Because I don't even think you can't petition the prosecuting attorney with a request and not the legislative body.
I was acting on the advice of my personal counsel to reach out as soon as possible, and I quoted exactly what was in the email. I didn't request anything outside of what was in the email. I quoted the RCW that was provided here. I'm not aware of what the proper protocol is. So to say I'm making a formal request or not, I don't know if that's the proper procedure.
I didn't see the email, but based on what was described to me, that's a request.
I thought so too.
Because I was told by Elizabeth Petrich,
Yeah.
when my incident said, all I had to do is just say it and put it out there either at a meeting or in an email.
Yeah, the language in the email is a request.
Yeah, so then but then that doesn't trigger us to act within 3 days or something.
But just to clarify, the email coming to me and to you, because all of you are the board, I have to then send it on to the rest of the members.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't included on the email when it was sent on, which is part of why I feel blindsided by this. It's fine that it was forwarded on, and it was fine, it's okay that it was forwarded because this is the legislative body. But without the commissioner being aware that their message was forwarded immediately on causes problems like this.
I don't think there's any problems because you
there's confusion.
You copied the confusion, never mind. You copied the chair, and so I forwarded on to the rest of the 3 saying you didn't receive this. That often happens with messages if someone is left off.
Transparency is important, and we're a body that all convenes, and that's the only time we make decisions.
That's okay. Transparency is important. I'm not arguing that at all. Transparency would have also been including commissioners that sent emails to ensure that everybody knows, okay, this information has been shared.
Commissioner Edwards.
The term "as soon as possible" was used momentarily from your counsel, apparently, that you should bring this up to this body as soon as possible. now is as soon as possible, in my estimation.
Well, she did it, and we don't have to move as soon as possible. She needs to get in front of us as soon as possible because there's scheduling issues and whatever. So
makes sense.
I would have given her exactly that advice as her lawyer, and then, but doesn't mean I have to do anything.
Well,
I mean, we don't ever have to take this up, I don't think.
Until we have a conversation with the prosecutor, I'm happy to wait, but I do not want to expend funds or anything until we actually have a discussion with the prosecutor. That's kind of where
That's where I'm
I'm
at
at.
as well. So like, when we just set that up as soon as we can. Sure.
And I'm happy to come in during break. I'll be here and I'm available,
Just
so.
let us know.
Yeah, there's,
And, I mean, we don't know exactly
I
when
am as
that'll
well.
be. My impression from my conversation with Jane is that John Thunheim may not be available all week. I don't want to say that for sure, but
I
I'll
want to
see.
bring,
but we'll find out.
see if Scott or Travis or
Yep.
Jane, whoever is assigned, can make themselves available as soon as possible.
Perfect.
there's many places in the RCWs that refer to the prosecuting attorney doing this or that.
Yes.
And a deputy prosecuting attorney often fills in on almost every one of those positions. So I don't see that he has to be here personally.
He doesn't have to, but you're correct. But to me, this is a huge deal, and there are certain times, like when we were joining the opioid litigation and putting the county on the. I mean, there's certain things that are so big that I believe the elected prosecutor really needs to be the one. I want to hear that from him, not one of his deputies. But you're right that it doesn't have to be. It's just my preference based on kind of previous practice on big items like this.
So long as not answering the Commissioner Klaus as soon as possible doesn't, infringe on some type, like some right to counsel that we're, unaware of. I think a decision of if we're comfortable moving it forward or not, is something that is totally within our purview to make. And I prefer to make it or not make it as soon as possible, which would be right now. But, if waiting, doesn't, if I was in that seat, if I was in her seat, I would want to know now. I wouldn't want to wait 15 days, 16 days on whether or not I was going to get legal counsel or not. I want it lined up now. But, if that's not, that's in my mind, that's the humane thing to do, is to provide an answer in, that when somebody's in crisis. But, if we don't want to have that discussion yet.
Well, it's just, I get it, but like the board has voted twice to defend me with legal representation. And so I feel
Yeah, you've been through it.
I just don't want to be inconsistent. I don't want to be self-serving. I want to be fair. I just have questions that I need answered, and, I don't want to be taking an inconsistent position and, taking what's good for me and then treating a different commissioner differently unless there's, I understand exactly what the distinctions are and what the legal ramifications of the distinctions are. My case is not her case. I'm not saying it couldn't be voted on differently, but I'm personally, since I benefited from my seatmates' vote on this, I'm going to be very careful about doing something different and knowing exactly why I'm doing it. I'm not quite there yet. I didn't know this request was coming. Obviously I knew that there was a possibility, but I think it's fair to be able to ask a few questions to counsel before I take this kind of vote, which could put me in a really difficult and weird feeling position when I was the beneficiary of a board vote for the representation in 2 recall petitions.
Again, I guess I just have to reiterate that your situation, in both of your situations, you were acting as a county commissioner, doing your job the way you felt you should do that job. And I think the board reflected that recognition. I happened to be there, so each time I participated in those. In this case, all I'm asking for is explain it to me why this is job related. And I haven't heard that yet. And I am prepared to deny, if that's the way you want to call it, if I can't be convinced there's a nexus between the job of county commissioner and this recall.
And I need to read the recall petition. I didn't, like I said, I didn't know this was coming up today, so I haven't even read it. I don't know exactly what the basis of the charge is, how far it deviates from the allegations that our investigators found not to be true that related to her job. For example, there was an allegation of an unlawful termination. Terminating your executive assistant is something that you do you should have the right to do that. And if that, like, just say hypothetically, if that were the sole basis of the recall, I'd say she ought to be defended.
Yeah, the two pieces of evidence in the
I haven't
recall
read
that
it.
I read are, it's the investigative report and, I believe HR's memo. So there's nothing that
They don't
that
get
I
into
saw.
any specifics,
so,
they just
yeah.
refer to the,
Like, those are where the specifics are drawn from. But you're absolutely right. If you haven't read it, you should read it, because that's what we're being asked, is,
Yeah.
were
exactly.
these complaints that are made, were they actions taken by the commissioner within their job duties? And that's the question.
yeah. And again, because like I say, we have in the report, we have a mixture of both. We have things that Commissioner Klaus took actions that were beyond, that had nothing to do with work, that we feel violated public trust. Then there were allegations made that did relate to work that the investigation didn't substantiate. So there's a mix there, and I just need to sort of read the petition and then talk to and hear it from counsel.
Specific charges were for misfeasance, malfeasance, and violation of oath of office. And then there's a series of statements as to why.
Okay, very good. Sorry, go ahead.
I guess my concern is here on this particular issue that in the resolution of censure, we all agreed that an employee, a supervising employee of Thurston County would have been terminated for this same action.
Subject to, it said subject
Up
to
to.
actions up to.
Up to termination, that's right.
That was a tweet, that was me.
But I have no doubt, and actually we've got a couple of similar instances leading up to this with other supervisory people that have been terminated. And I think it's just kind of unusual that we're talking about defending an action that a commissioner was involved in, when at the same time, we would more than likely be terminating an employee for doing the same thing. And it just kind of twists things up, I guess.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, do we need to address anything else? I think, is there a concurrence with the county manager setting up with council a session as soon as that can be scheduled to address Commissioner Klaus's request, rather than taking a vote today? Someone can make a motion, but.
I don't have a motion thought out or wrote out, but so I'd probably make a second if the right motion was made. Yeah, could be made by Commissioner Klaus. I don't know.
I don't think that would, well, I don't know how that, yeah, maybe, but I don't know how that plays out. You don't typically make motions like that on yourself, but.
She can't. I'm personally not gonna second a motion or vote in favor of any motion for representation or non-representation at this point, so, but I'm just one.
Is it a motion that usually follows?
Yeah, I think it's a motion for the legislative to support,
I think she's
representation from the
referring to a
prosecuting
motion
attorney's
to
office.
direct me to get a meeting together. Is that what
Those
you're
are the
referring
two
to?
possibilities.
Yeah. We have, tell the county manager to go get a meeting together ASAP with the right prosecuting attorney, or ...
Sounds good to
Yeah,
me.
well, because at this point, it's like, like I mentioned, I'm not willing to authorize any expenditures from the county.
That's an expenditure, though. That's putting the prosecuting attorney on a time clock where we're paying for.
Well, he's gonna come in and he's going to explain to us, and at that time, we're either gonna approve or deny it.
Okay.
Or there can be a motion made now, and I haven't heard one.
A motion to deny payment?
I guess there's
Support?
a question on the table from Commissioner Menzer that wasn't necessarily laid out as a motion. So I don't know the semantics behind like direction to set up a meeting versus a motion to make a decision immediately. I've heard that we would, I've heard a majority of commissioners say we're interested in a meeting, setting up a meeting. And then Commissioner Fournier having a sense of urgency to decide as soon as possible, which I appreciate to an extent. And so I don't know, I'm hearing different things, but I don't know what makes more sense. Direction to the county manager to set up a meeting, or I'm not asking for an immediate decision by the board, but that's the prerogative of the board, of course.
Maybe the most I think maybe if there's a formal request for counsel from Commissioner Klaus, then we would set a meeting up for that, perhaps. Maybe that's what needs to be done is Commissioner Klaus is formally requesting the county provide legal counsel on her recall petition. And we set up a meeting to discuss that, at which point the prosecuting attorney or representative would be there and prepared.
That's exactly what we're saying.
That's exactly what I would want, which is why I voted against your motion to amend the amended agenda today, because I didn't really think this was the best way to deal with that.
This is how we have a discussion. This is one way to have a discussion.
Yeah, that's fine. But I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that's what we need.
Yeah, we're creating a space for Commissioner Klaus to make a formal request of us, because my opinion is fair. I've made my opinion clear from the start. And, I'm not going to necessarily make a push to bring the prosecuting attorney's office in if I feel that there's a legislative decision that could be made right now, yay or nay, up or down. But if Commissioner Klaus is to make a formal request of us to set up a meeting, I think that is.
Well, I learned about the petition, the recall, when I ran into Prosecutor Tunheim at the Sentencing Guideline Commission meeting, and he shared he was sort of had just heard about it and was sort of thinking out loud to me and shared some nuances that I think the board needs to hear, frankly. Just about this whole process and about these subsections of the RCW. I know a couple of you at least are probably already made up your mind, period. Nothing's going to change that. But for me, there were nuances that in hearing him sort of think out loud about how this plays out and how it was different than mine and everything, I heard him say some things that I would feel like the board could benefit from. So I'm just asking for that opportunity, and then we can vote.
Well, I'll just be blunt. It's going to take, honestly, a lot to convince me. We've already expended a lot of county resources into this whole thing, and we continue to expend resources. And I've just, for me, I am just not at the point where we say that we have tight budgets, we say all of this, and yet we are continuing to expend resources on this. I'm just not comfortable. So it would take a lot for what the prosecutor would say to convince me otherwise, because I'm not willing to spend one more penny on this.
And I think it's important, like the email, if an email is just kind of gone out under the table to the county manager and to the chair, kind of hinting at wanting this, that's not the transparency that I think this decision process requires. That's why it's important that we bring it out today. And if we're going to bring in the prosecutor, if we're going to move anywhere on this, I would want a formal request from Commissioner Klaus to do that in an open setting. And I would get behind evaluating the merits of the request. And I think having it in this forum, that discussion of whether we do or not, is what provides the transparency. Otherwise, if it was, some closed door meeting with the prosecutor and Commissioner Klaus and the chair, that's not how I think this should be handled. So I'm not going to move on anything. If somebody, I'm friendly to the idea of the requests that, and, the need for additional evaluation that Commissioner Mentzer's asking for. But for me, I want to hear those words. I want to hear Commissioner Klaus say, I'm requesting the board provide legal counsel, and we set up a meeting, and then that's what happens next. If I don't hear it, then I guess.
I don't know if that's required. I mean, and there's no closed door meeting. I didn't even know Commissioner Klaus made that. We've talked about it. I didn't even know it was coming. I haven't seen the email. My assistant texted me this morning that she saw in the email that there was that request. So I know nothing about it. I think that her email, as I understand it, I haven't seen it with my eyes, is a formal request. You can state it right now if you want, if that helps Commissioner Fournier, but, yeah, maybe it's the lawyer in me coming out, but it's like, I like to know, like, I've had multiple recall petitions to grapple with, and I may have more. Who knows how long I'll be sitting here. And I like to be consistent. I like to know the standard I'm applying and that I'm being consistent with different situations. Maybe Commissioner Klaus's situation is totally no-go, right? And mine was totally yes, go. There didn't seem to be much dissension about representing me and mine. So where's the middle? Like, I don't know where I want to suss out with the prosecuting attorney, like, how do we think about this? Like, where's the line? Like, maybe if Commissioner Klaus, if she didn't do what she did, but she did something kind of in the middle, like, I want to feel comfortable that I know where lines are drawn and where I can vote yes and no, just to go, well, I don't really like this one, but I was good, but, it's too murky in my head. I don't have the legal parameters laid out. You guys may not need that, but I do. That just makes how I make decisions and how I feel comfortable with the decisions that I make, how I answer to my constituents about the decisions I make. Because I would right now, if we took a vote right now, and I'd probably say no, just if you asked me which way I was leaning, and then I was questioned out in the sidewalk by constituents, I would have trouble articulating, what standards I applied and how I would deal with different types of scenarios. So that I could show consistency in what I do and how I think. So that's just kind of how I feel. Commissioner, I saw 3 hands. Go Commissioner Edwards, you're still holding yours up.
I would like to follow up on what Commissioner Mejia said and how much we have spent. I mean, I wouldn't doubt we've got $100,000 tied up in this fiasco now. And we're facing a claim and litigation filed against the county for $750,000, 750,000 plus other extenuating issues. So I'm ready to put a stop to this right now if I can do that. I don't know how to do that though.
Maybe Commissioner Klaus, I saw your hand.
So I wanted to respond. It sounded like Commissioner Fournier wanted to hear from me a specific statement.
Yeah, or maybe you read the room today and you're like, nah, I'm not going to go there.
So it sounds like it sounds like you saw the email, which explicitly says, I request under this RCW, directly quoting this email. If I need to, I can pull it up and read it verbatim right now, if people want to hear that. I did make a formal request to be represented under this RCW. I'm also requesting a meeting be set up with the prosecuting attorney or his representative. It sounds like that was the request you want me to verbalize now to make it clear.
Is that your position?
Right, yes.
So
I'm requesting that we set up a meeting as Commissioner Mincer requested or suggested.
It says you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
don't put words in anybody else's mouth.
I'm not. You can watch the recording. This is the meeting we've all been discussing for like the last 30 minutes, setting up a meeting with council. So I'm not, I mean, it's interesting.
I just don't want, I'm hearing you say, well, I'm doing what Commissioner Menser is asking.
Here's the thing. I'd love to talk to you. I really want to work through this. I'm being genuine with you, Commissioner Fournier. I would like to work through whatever is going on between you and I about communication in public meetings. Because sometimes I say things and I'm cut off by you because you're saying, well, you're biased and that's your perspective. I respect that that's what you feel about certain things. And of course, everyone's got a stake in this and it's for different reasons. I want to work through that with you because sometimes I hear you say, well, that's your perspective, that's your bias. Where other times you say, if I were you, this would be my perspective, and you're speaking like this is what your perspective would be if you were in my shoes. But then when I try to share mine, I'm shut down. And I just want to understand how to communicate effectively with you. Genuine, this coming from a place of sincerity.
Why are we having this discussion now? We're getting sidetracked.
Well, I respect that, Commissioner Mejia, but I don't have
this meeting with him. If you would wish to talk to Commissioner Fournier about communication, it doesn't have to be at this time right now. We have a discussion at hand. I wish to go back to that discussion.
I mean, I just keep getting shut down every time I try to have a conversation about like things that we should be, we should be able to interact about this. And we're talking about transparency, but every time I try to say, hey, we have relationships that need to be repaired, I'm shut down. And I just don't understand, when am I supposed to ask those questions? Because if a commissioner doesn't want to talk to me one-on-one, that's fine, like that's their prerogative. But in a public setting, when we're discussing these dynamics, I feel I should be able to say, hey, I want to work through this with you. That's my job. We're talking about transparency, and I'm being transparent about wanting to repair these relationships. So.
Well, then put a proposal forward on how you intend to, how you want to do it, instead of just saying words. And like right now, we are deviating from the conversation. We're having one conversation at hand, and it's 11:28. Are we going to either make a decision or not on this situation?
Commissioner Edwards, I saw your hand.
I guess I'm prepared to make a decision, but I understand that Commissioner Klaus has sent in the appropriate paperwork, whatever it takes, to ask this legislative body for representation in this matter of a recall. But I've continued to ask, why should we give you that representation? As far as I can see, this was brought on by your own actions and nothing to do with county employment.
So you have a choice. You can make a motion. You can say you're not gonna get that from Commissioner Klaus. She made that clear. You can make a motion to deny and to make the decision today, or we can have a follow-up meeting. Those are the two paths.
Well, I'm hearing.
So go ahead and make the motion if you'd like, or not. I think we're at the end of this discussion topic.
Shy an argument from Commissioner Klaus as to why I'm not willing to spend any taxpayer money.
But the issue is, do you want that decided today?
Well, I would, but that takes the majority of the board.
Are you gonna make a motion? Well, there needs to be a motion.
So it looks like we're gonna I would ask that the county manager.
Okay, I will make the motion.
Oh, okay, here we
There
go.
we go.
Motion, can you restate the motion?
I will make a motion to deny counsel to the recall petition for Commissioner Emily Klaus.
Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
I have a discussion point because it sounds like a majority will vote to deny this, which is a majority vote, and I respect the majority vote. I would still like to request a follow-up meeting regarding the process. If I'm gonna go without representation from the county, I understand that, but I still need to understand the process. I can't just go fly blind without understanding the process of a recall. It doesn't even have to be as it relates to me specifically, if we wanna avoid that piece of the discussion, because maybe that's gonna be decided today. I still need to understand what's the next step, and I can't understand that without legal input.
I'm not cutting you off, but I would venture to guess that the answer to that is whatever legal representation you receive provides you that advice.
Okay,
Whether it be
yeah.
provided through the county or self-sought.
So-
That's how you get that. That's the next step.
Well,
And that's what I'm trying to help you
yeah,
get to that point.
no, thank you. I do appreciate that. I do. The reason why I'm not sure is because what I was told by my attorney is reach out immediately, as soon as possible, request this. They might not be able to represent you. They might refer you to the AGO. So it's unclear from what the perspective I'm hearing, like what the next steps would be. If I need to figure it out on my own, okay, but I just didn't see it in writing. And from my attorney, it was like, well, we don't know if it would be, if they say no, are they gonna refer you to the AGO? And so, and maybe you're speaking from your own personal
I'm not aware
experience,
of a
but
referral to AGO is coming up in previous discussions of the board, but.
it was
I
just
mean,
something, yeah, that was thrown
Some
out.
input from council, I don't think,
Yeah,
on
and I wanna-
recall processes in general, I
Yeah.
don't think it's inappropriate, but.
Could I clarify that?
Yeah.
Am I understanding, when you say AGO, you mean Attorney General's office, this Washington State Attorney General's office? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm saying what my attorney said, so yeah, I believe that's correct.
That's what I
I
understood
can't
you to
say
be
for sure, but I'm just, yeah.
I don't think there's any involvement.
If
Maybe
it is denied, if this motion passes, it sounds like you have an attorney that can advise you.
Well, she's on a separate issue, that's why it's.
Yeah, so they would I don't wanna go into personal
So,
advice.
I'm gonna refocus this because the motion is on the table. I'm gonna just say that I will vote against the motion, really not on the substance, but on the process. I'm unlikely to probably support it, but I've laid out my concerns about I'm not clear about the meaning of these statutes and how they've been applied in other cases, and there's just a lot more that I'd want to know before I'd feel comfortable, given that I got the benefit of county representation twice in the past. So just on a process standpoint, I'm voting no. I don't want that to be interpreted as if I'm supporting legal representation for Commissioner Klaus right now. I'm not, and I don't, I'm skeptical that I probably would, but I do not think that I'm ready to make that vote today. So I'm going to vote no. Commissioner Edwards?
I guess as part of discussion, I would just say there is one solution. And that is if you were to resign from office, all of this goes away, except we're still stuck with the legal ramifications that you've brought on us through this inappropriate action, and we have to defend against that litigation.
Okay, I think that's outside the scope of the motion on the table. I saw Commissioner Mejia's hand.
I'm voting on this purely from a financial standpoint perspective. For me, it's, I just do not believe that the county should keep expending for this, and so I am just not comfortable at this time to extend any more funds.
Vice Chair Fournier.
I can't support providing legal fees. I've been, from the start, I've been very open with Commissioner Klaus about that. I don't see that any, and really based on the investigation, I don't see that there was any part of this that was done in the proper course of one's duties as a county commissioner. So I have to stand by that. I've read the recall petition, and the things called out in the petition are explicitly referred to in the investigation and the HR statement. So to stand in opposition of the petition, I would feel like I was standing in opposition to the HR statement and the adopted investigation. So
here's another element for me. There are certain things that are appropriate for recall petitions and certain that are not. So even if somebody did something wrong, it might not meet the recall. So if a commissioner is subject to a recall that's not even appropriate for a recall, I think that you could argue that that commissioner should be defended when it's sort of an improper legal act. I mean, those are the kind of questions that I have for counsel. And, again, probably I don't get there, but I think there are dynamics to this that are more subtle, and that Mr. Thunheim was describing to me, that I think that we're jumping the gun like we have on almost every topic related to this subject, and being reactive. And I just think we could benefit from a more thorough discussion and thinking through the nuances of something like this. Because, like I say, Commissioner Mejia and I were dragged into court on a criminal complaint because of a Open Public Meeting Act thing, and we got legal representation from prosecuting attorney. I don't know what the standard is there, but
I would say, however, whether or not the petition meets or warrants or is merited based on the complaint, we wouldn't be in that position.
I know, and that's an
if it wasn't for inappropriate personal decisions.
And I get that.
So
but you could see how there could be two
Absolutely.
sides to a debate like that. If a totally inappropriately procedural recall was brought, you could see. So that's just what I'm saying. Like, I'm just not quite there. And I mean, and again, without input from the PAO, I'm going to vote no. But I think, is there any other discussion before we call for the vote? I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Hold on. Let's clarify. The motion was.
The motion was to deny representation from the prosecuting attorney's office for Commissioner Klaus in the recall proceeding.
Thank you.
From a legislative standpoint. And I'm going to call for that vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay.
I'm gonna say nay, yeah.
Or abstain?
I'd say nay because I would, if I had the chance to amend the motion, which I don't think anyone can do, it would be
Well, just
only
before you finish that vote,
Okay.
so I'm sorry to interrupt
That's
you.
okay.
I remember that I recused myself from the vote both times. I don't remember if I was told I had to or I decided to. I think I just decided to.
Prudent.
Anyway, just sharing that.
Okay.
That's what I did, but go ahead. I think you're entitled to take a vote.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would vote nay only on the basis of wanting to have that conversation with council first, not because, same as you, not because I disagree with my seatmate's position on wanting to spend more funds. I also don't want to, there's financial concerns I have as well, so it's procedural only that I'm voting no.
Okay, so 3-2, that motion carries, and I think that issue will be laid to rest. My understanding of the law. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So on the next item then, would we be able to request the county manager set up a meeting with council related to recall processes in general?
I'm fine with that. I don't know if there's any.
Yeah, I've got a concern with that.
Go ahead.
We can't get the county prosecutor here today for us or one of his deputies.
Yes.
To be involved in this discussion and this legislative action. I certainly, after we've denied any more expenditures, they're billing us by the hour, I guess is how they keep track for each office they represent. And I don't want to spend any more money on this issue. And any attorney, any competent attorney, I would guess, could represent you and give you the process that lays out this recall and what you should follow. I don't think you want to take any advice from us because none of us really know. And I don't want to spend any more money.
Spelled out in what the auditor's office provided us as well, but.
Okay, Commissioner Mejia, I guess you're the.
I don't mind, I mean, this is our last session of the year.
I don't know when that session would happen, Commissioner Klaus, and if it's, I don't know that it can happen quick enough to help you with your timelines.
Okay, that's okay. If we don't have time to set up a meeting, that's okay. What would the avenue be for me to ask the question of what are the next steps? I mean, if the next steps are go figure it out on your own, okay, that's totally fine. But how do I find that out? Because it's not spelled out in the RCW. Maybe I need to review the recall petition again because it sounds like Commissioner Fournier said there's something in there maybe, or am I misunderstanding? You said that the process is for me to seek my own counsel.
I'm not,
What I could do, Commissioner, send an email to Scott Cushing and copy the members of the board on it, informing them of the vote today, which I should, including John Junehunt, then asking that if they could provide high-level overview of what, in light of the board's decision, what Commissioner Klaus should do next.
I would say as long as that's to all of us.
Yes.
And there's no individual meeting between one commissioner and the prosecuting attorney's office.
And just saying that please provide, I mean, because she hasn't made a formal response. We just voted, but she's probably, I think it's fair that she could, for her to take to her next attorney or take her next step, kind of a formal, here's what happened, and if included in that response, they can provide any appropriate high-level information about the county's, the response.
Gotcha. I'll
based
draft
on,
that
the
today.
fact that the consequences of the vote we just took.
Draft that today.
Okay, does that bring to a close the agenda? Are there other commissioner items?
I do have a commissioner item. Leonard, you just sent out an email to the board saying that there had to be a decision made as soon as possible in terms of a litigation update. And I'm just wondering, when are we expecting that to happen?
So we're working with, and just for context, because this matter is related to the Ellen Hershey litigation, I've been instructed by counsel not to include you on that correspondence. But there is some timelines that Brian Bishop made me aware of. There's other conversations that he was brought up to speed with the attorneys, but out of the abundance of making sure you had all the information, because some of this I didn't even know, we're trying to get a time tomorrow around 3 o'clock. We're trying to verify with the bond counsel, the attorneys, our internal attorneys. That's just a time that's being proposed, and if everyone can make it work, we'll confirm as soon, in the next, as soon as we can get out of this meeting and confirm. Apologize that Brian wasn't tracking a couple things on the time frame, but there's some, I think, information you should all hear.
Tomorrow at 3 o'clock is like literally the only time slot I have.
We're aware of that. The schedulers are doing their behind the scenes work.
Crazy week, so, all right. If there's no other commissioner items, then we'll bring.
Cookie exchange in 5 minutes.
Not on my calendar. Okay, we're at the end of the agenda and we're adjourned.